Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hey everybody, this is Brian Smith with Grief to Growth, back with another episode. And today I've got with me Miami Knight. Miami is a fellow Shining Light parent. And for you, Miami, you may not know what that is, but in Helping Parents Heal, we call people who have had children transition, we call them Shining Light parents, because we feel like our kids are shining lights and we're trying to become shining lights. So that's where that term comes from. But Miami is a grief educator and trainer. Miami experienced 3 major life-changing losses within her family structure in 8 years. She lost her father and sister of complicated natural causes, and her beloved son, Taiki, who was shot in an incident, which also claimed the life of his friend, I should say. Though Taiki survived, he lived with PTSD, depression, anxiety, and survivor's remorse. And 5 years after his attempted murder, Taiki died by gun suicide. Miami is a certified master grief coach with a specialty in bereavement recovery. She authored The Key Process, a grief guide to mastering spiritual healing. She's a shamanic energy practitioner and the host of Grief Talk on It's the Miami Knight Show. She also serves on the National Council for Behavioral Health as a mental health first aider and is trained as a QPR suicide prevention gatekeeper. We'll have to talk about what that is because I don't know. Miami is the CEO, founder of Miami Knight LLC, a grief education and training company. She's also a gun violence prevention advocate who serves as a volunteer with Moms Demand Action, DeKalb, as survivor membership lead. She also provides grief support and mentorship with the Survivors Connect leadership team. Miami is a voice for Everytown Survivor Network, a part of both Moms Demand Action and Everytown for Gun Safety, sharing a story with an array of audiences. That is quite a resume, Miami. Welcome to Grief to Growth.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
So I'm not sure exactly where to start with you. There's so much I think we could talk about. So I'm going to let you decide. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start talking about Taiki or about the work you're doing now?
Sure. I'll start with him. He's always the topic of my day anyway. I start with him in the morning. So yes, in 2011, my son actually was shot, critically injured. He was actually shot in his head. Him and his best friend both, but his best friend did not survive. And this was December 17th of 2011. Fortunately, Taiki did survive. And there was intense, getting him back to his self, which was all types of rehab, therapy for speech, getting up to be able to walk all over again. And then there was this trial. So he was the surviving key witness. And so he was able to provide his story in order to have both gentlemen that were behind this quarrel that they were having, street beef, was able to receive justice on the behalf of Taiki and as well as the family that lost their son as well. 5 years after that, Taiki died by gun suicide. And I can say that now so much more easier than, of course, originally when it first initially happened. You would think that the most devastating day was me getting that phone call from Pensacola stating that he was shot and his best friend was killed. But the most devastating of them all was finally hearing that Taiki had died when his father called me. Taiki, in between those 5 years, he moved to here because actually he was raised in Pensacola, Florida with his father. And of course, we did the occasional yearly. Once he got out of school, he would come here for the summer, or birthdays, holidays, or I would go there, come here. It was just a big transition, having a family, a multiple family with they had a different father. So with them growing up apart, my children and myself, of course, growing apart, even I can say with Taiki, because of course it wasn't the day-to-day. I wasn't the day-to-day mom being there
Okay.
every day, of
Hmm.
course. And so I had all of this guilt and shame, of course, after he died, because I wasn't there every day.
Yeah.
But over the course of learning what grief was for me and learning how to not live without my son being in the world, that was, it was very challenging, I must
Hmm.
say. But after about a year, I would say, I simply just decided, and that's really the key to being able to, move forward, which is just deciding that I needed to do something differently
Yeah.
besides in my grief. Of course, I mourned him a lot. I was very distracted all the time. Didn't know how to, stay focused. But the what I can say is I had a lot of support, and I had ways of getting myself back to that, getting back on track, I would say. And by doing that, which was deciding, I started making steps. And the first thing I could say is I decided. The second thing I did is I started communing with others more often, because
Hmm.
of course, losing a child or just losing anyone, you kind of lose your sense of self. So you're not wanting to even be around the people that are close to you in your own household, which could be your spouse or your other children. So I had to kind of get used to reconvening with people just
Hmm.
within itself. I started going back to work, and I went to a vision board party. And in that vision board part, during that vision board party, it just came to me of the things that I needed to do, which was going to help me move forward. And actually, 2 days prior to Taiki originally, no, 2 days prior to Taiki dying, I was having a session with a young lady, which is a grief, excuse me, which is a life coach, and she was helping me organize what my business was going to look like. And at the time,
Hmm.
I am also certified in event coordination and event planning,
Hmm.
so I was starting my own event decor company at the time. And of course, his death threw me for a loop, so that kind of just went wayward in that time period. But I had a 90-day plan of what to do as far as starting my business, my religious practices, also, what else was it? The physicalities of exercising and all those
Hmm.
things that I needed to do, the four corners of my life, which I was needing support with at the time.
Yeah.
And so I had these things to do, and I just started doing them. But that's kind of what helped me get back.
Wow. Wow. So, you just happened to be seeing a life coach right before he made his transition. Is that, did I understand correctly?
Yes,
Okay.
I had a 90-day plan
Hmm.
designed for me to work through what I needed to do for my
Yeah.
business. And I always say, God kind of always knows what's going on prior to what we do. And he really just gave me a plan, because after I came back from Florida after the funeral, I was just like really confused. Um,
Yeah.
Going through his things, because of course, we brought back a lot of his stuff, and then I was going through everything, just trying to find, a sign, or just I was just lost, and I really needed to understand how did we get here, which I knew how we got here, but it just still I needed some solace to tell me, Mom, this, I'm sorry, or something. I just needed something. And really,
Yeah.
to be honest, I did find a lot of those things, because I brought back a lot of his music. Taiki was a lyricist. He was had been rapping since he was a 9, 10 years old.
Mm.
And he was in gospel groups. So he did a lot of recording of music, and he wrote so much. And I have his entire copyright catalog of everything that he did. So I was able to go and piece together those things of his traumas and things that he thought about, which he suffered a lot, because he still had the bullet lodged in his head. They didn't remove it
Oh.
because of, they thought he would be paralyzed on his left side, which he did have some paralysis on that side. But he totally came back as, to himself, I would say. The only thing he had was a limp on his
Okay.
left side. But other than that, he was back fully. You wouldn't have known that he had been shot. You couldn't even see scars. So, on the outside, it looked like he had it all together, but in the
Mm.
inside, he still grieved so much, and also that survivor's remorse of losing his best friend,
Yeah.
which was very traumatic for him.
Yeah, I guess that would have to be. How old was he when he passed again?
22, and he was
22.
not at, he was seven. They both were 17-year-old.
Yeah, yeah. That's a tough time anyway. And then as you said, the survivor's guilt and the trauma of going through all that, I'm sure was just really really hard on him. So after he passed, and I don't use the word died very often, so
Okay.
I always try to explain that to people. It's not that I don't realize people do, our bodies do die, but I believe that Taiki survived. So that's my
Yeah.
personal belief. So I don't use the word died. But after he transitioned, you were planning this event coordinating business. So where did you go after that? Did you start the business?
Yes, actually, I did. I had launch and everything, and I still was searching in that yearning period of grief. I was still looking for Taiki and how can I be, more assistful into honoring him.
Hmm.
And I could have party. I've been doing parties for such a long time, and I just wanted more for myself as well. So I did a couple of other things, which was journaling, and then that's when I started writing, basically the memoir of what has happened over the last 8 years of me
Hmm.
losing my loved ones. And I still needed more understanding about the process. So I started researching and looking up grief experts and what their thoughts of what grief was, and also to understand what I was possibly going through at the time. So
Hmm.
that kind of transitioned me into a whole nother realm, which was the grief education. And then I became certified as a master grief coach, because I wanted to know how to support myself. And I know that my son was coping, and I didn't want everybody to just cope. I wanted them to find the skills that they needed to be able to move forward,
Yeah.
if they had been dealing, or we deal with a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be death, but I wanted to be able to support others and how to do that. So, and I did some background work for even myself, and some clearing of energies and things
Hmm.
that I had stored in and never released. And I went to a woman's retreat, and I learned what childhood trauma release was. And and I definitely needed some of those things because of things that happened in my childhood. And also, just like I said, the fact of me holding on to not being a day-to-day parent to Taiki, that was really like the hardest thing for me, because like I said, the shame, the guilt of thinking that I could have done something more, which I know now that there's nothing that could have changed the outcome of that.
Right.
So I went to Miami after I went to visit Taiki grave after a year's time, because my older children, they wanted to go on his death anniversary, and they went, but I wasn't quite ready.
Mm.
So I waited till kind of like later that in the year, around about August, and this was after I had done the grief training, and I felt like that kind of prepared me a little bit more to go to the gravesite. And I went there, and I just loved on him and loved on that space and that time, and just I got so many signs of him while I was there.
Hmm.
And I left there, and my husband and we drove to Miami, Florida, and that's originally where I'm from. I was born there, wasn't raised there. We left when I was about 2 years old. So
Hmm.
I kind of missed out on the tradition and the customs of Miami, not really knowing what that was. And I also knew the story behind my name, which was my father sat on the beach and watched the sunrise every morning. And when he saw the sun meets the water edge, he just thought that was the most profound and beautiful thing he ever saw. So that's where my name came from.
Hmm.
And I wanted to experience that because I had been to Miami, of course, back and forth over the years, but never to experience what my father thought of me. And
Hmm.
I actually did that after going to visit Taiki, because I needed to really connect with myself. And when I
Yeah.
did that, that's when I had my spiritual awakening. And grief just happened to be a part of the walk for me. And in doing that, that's how I got here. That's how I'm sitting here
Hmm.
talking to you now, because everything else just started falling into place of this is where I'm supposed to be. Yes, the event decor business will also be a part of any type of gathering that I may have, because I just love to decorate.
Yeah.
But it's more so that I needed to be in the space to help others with going just through and getting them through the process.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you just poured yourself into it, and this event, and I think of I think of it as a triggering event that we go through. And I think that these are types of things that kind of launch us into the next phase of our life. And so I can see with you, I mean, you were doing this event planning, event coordinating thing, probably had no idea you were going to be doing grief and working in gun violence. And then suddenly you're like, okay, this is my path. This is what I'm here to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm interested in the energy healing that you do. When did that come into the picture?
Well, it came in the picture after I started my grief coaching organization, and
Mm-hmm.
then I really wanted to learn more about the grounding process. And as I stated earlier, I had started writing my book, which is The Key Process: A Grief Guide to
Mm-hmm.
Mastering Spiritual Healing, and I wanted to really connect with my ancestors and do some healing and work there. But I started first with meditation, and meditation was just the beginning of the spiritual work, and it was actually what connected me to my spirit center and who I consider my God, and working with my guides and ancestors and all the spirit beings that love on me. I started understanding what that was more so in being still, and that's just simply what the meditation was. And
Mm-hmm.
then after that, I started changing my diet. I became a vegan because I needed a real change throughout my spirit, body, and soul. I just wanted to, become a whole new being. And so
Mm-hmm.
I became a plant-based vegan.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband and I, we actually started it from doing the 21-day Daniel fast. We just never went back to eating meat thereafter. So the easiest way I feel for us was doing the fast and then just transitioning over
Mm-hmm.
into that. And that's kind of what got me clear. It changed my mindset. I could hear my senses even better, and smell, even, my smelling senses even got broader.
Hmm.
Waking up I start feeling better within my body. I wasn't in so much pain because I struggled with chronic pain. So all of those things, by just changing my diet, changed me.
Hmm.
And then I started learning about mindfulness. And then when I started learning about mindfulness and about what that meant and just being in the present moment, the spirituality just kept coming along with that. It just kept
Hmm.
following
Yeah.
me. And I started exercising more. And one day I was out walking, and one of my friends, she had called me and she was like, "Oh, Miami," she was like, "Your hands are so healing. I need you to do some work on me." And I was like, okay. And I started learning about what Reiki was, what Reiki energy was.
Hmm.
And that's an old Japanese tradition that is well known, and it actually allows the practitioner to move energy throughout the chakras. And I wanted to know what that actually meant, and if I could try to work on myself. And kind of, like I said, I struggle with chronic pain, and I wanted to know if I could do that for myself. And I have actually worked on people, not even realizing that what Reiki was. And
Yeah.
once I started learning more about it, I was like, yeah, I've had this all along. So, it's a really amazing experience if you can ever get an opportunity to try it. But it definitely helps you with removing negative thoughts and intrusive thoughts that you may have. And also by doing some of those things with guided trances or guided meditations, it can help release energy throughout the body.
Hmm.
And that's how I kind of transitioned more and more and more over to the ancestral side of working with them,
Hmm.
and just wanting to heal some of the lineage, generational stuff within my family. When I felt like Taiki was kind of a little hung up a little after his transition. And I wanted to make sure, and I say that because for the longest time, I kind of course, I didn't feel his spirit close to me at first, but after I started becoming more clear of this is okay for me to live this life without him, I started learning that I have to connect with him. And if I didn't talk to him, he wasn't going to talk to me or have a relationship with me. And
Yeah.
so the more I start having this relationship with him and my other ancestors, which was me constantly always talking to my grandmother or my aunts or my sister and my father as well. They all became closer to me.
Hmm.
So as I started feeling more connected with them and doing certain type of rituals, which could be a water ritual, which could simply be a prayer, or giving uh, food to your ancestors, or just offering
Hmm.
some type of offering to them to let them know that you want to have a relationship with them. And if you open yourself to it and get more in depth with the mindfulness and meditation, you can definitely open yourself into learning more about what that spiritual connection will look like for you and your loved one.
Wow. So I'm curious as to what your spirituality, how would you describe it today, and what was it like before, and when, and if it changed, when it changed? I mean, were you raised in this type of spirituality?
Well, actually, my parents always had said that they knew something was a little different about me, because I had how a child may have a little friend that they always talk to, and that's just kind of common for kids to have that
Hmm.
uh, a childhood friend that you may talk to that's not there. Well, my mother said that mine was a little bit more extra than just the little friend that would come and I would play and just be playing in a room with. My mom actually felt that I was seeing spirit a lot.
Hmm.
And I've always been connected with meditating. I've taught my children that very early on. It has always gravitated to me.
Hmm.
Um, I've always been able to commune with spirit and always hear other spirits talk to me when I'm having conversations to other people. And I'm pretty much a lot of my girlfriends, they call me, oh, there goes the confirmer. She is going to confirm it, because I will often say something that they have heard or just said or they just thought about, and it would just come to me in a conversation
Hmm.
that I'm having with someone, and I can actually hear others' ancestors talking to me to relay a message. So I've always kind of had this linkage between me and spirit anyway. I just
Hmm.
finally really start working at it and
Okay.
pouring myself more into it after Taiki passed. And like I said, the big thing for me was releasing some of the childhood trauma, which was suppressing things that were. It was actually suppressing my spirituality in order for me not to grow in that area, because
Yeah.
I was so bogged down with the weight of everything else.
Hmm.
But once I started removing those intrusive thoughts and things that no longer served me, which was things that I hadn't dealt with, um, it allowed me to have a more, I guess, communal relationship with my higher consciousness. And then, so therefore, I was able to start hearing more voices and being able to connect with them and not shying away from it or being afraid of it.
Yeah. So, what would you call your spirituality now? Is there a name for it, or is it just I'm
Well, by
just
name, I'm actually licensed shaman. Uh,
okay. Okay.
but just for me, it's just me. I've just
Yeah.
always been this way. But if I had to go practical, I would just say I have studied the shaman. I have had shaman training.
Yeah, and I wasn't meaning to make you put a label on it, because I tell people I practice Bryanism. I was raised as a Christian, and I've studied Buddhism, and I believe in Buddhist philosophy. I think there's a lot of good stuff there, but I'm on a path now where I'm just taking truth wherever I find it. So here or there, whatever. And I think we should all, this is my opinion, we should all have our unique spiritual path, because it's different for all of us. We all connect to our higher self or spirit, or whatever you want to call it, in a unique way. So yeah, I think it's really fascinating to hear how your development has come along to get you to the point where you are now.
Yeah, thank you.
So I want to talk about your gun violence work also. There's just so much to talk about with you. I want to make sure we touch on all of it. So tell me about your work with gun violence.
Oh, yes. Well, last July, I actually went to my first Moms Demand Action meeting, and it was a Wear Orange event, and that's kind of like what I have on today. We wear orange in the month of June to signify National Gun Violence Awareness.
Hmm.
So we just actually had that a couple of weeks ago, and it's usually around the 1st of June. And what that signifies is all of the survivors and just individuals that have had some type of encounter with gun violence, and we like to celebrate our loved ones who have transitioned, and we want to just let people know that, we are here, we still have our grievances, but yet, we're stronger together as a unit. So I started working with Moms Demand Action here in Georgia, and it's really been a great resource for me to just connect with other mothers who have gone through similar likeness as myself, or it doesn't have to necessarily be that it's a loss of your child.
Right.
I've also interviewed mass shooting survivors, individuals that have just been victimized with guns, families that have been affected by intentional homicide, as well as domestic violence, also unintentional deaths. That happens a lot when guns are unsecured and left in the homes. And of course, like now, and of course, due to COVID, children are out of school, which just recently here in Georgia, that just happened here just last week. I saw on the news individuals losing their lives, children losing their lives due to finding guns in the home. So it's been very interesting to work with individuals that has an array of different instances of who is a survivor. Sometimes we don't even identify being a survivor. Say, for instance, if you lost your father when you were a child to gun violence, you might not even recognize that means that you're a survivor. You are a survivor of being a gun violence victim because of your association with your lost loved one.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of helping. Moms Demand Action is just one of the greatest and largest grassroots organizations that is out there that strengthens gun laws and policies and making America safe. That's what we want to do here. And, the statistics about gun violence is just, crazy. It's like for women, every 16 hours in America, a woman is either killed or shot due to the impact of a former or prior or previous now intimate partner. And suicide makes up 60% of gun deaths. So I really wanted to make that connection for myself to be able to speak up and advocate and be able to talk to lawmakers about making a change. And by us telling our stories, it really makes other people understand, hey, I've gone through this, you can too. Gun bullets doesn't have any names on them at sometimes, that's why it really scares me when we have holidays and people are shooting up in the air. Those bullets have to come down and go somewhere. So it's just, Moms actually gives us the opportunity, and also Every Town for Gun Safety, it gives us the opportunity to educate ourselves on gun violence and how to be able to work with our lawmakers to make a difference.
We'll get back to Grief to Growth in just a few seconds. Did you know that Brian is an author and a life coach? If you're grieving or know someone who is grieving, his book, Grief to Growth, is a best-selling, easy-to-read book that might help you or someone you know. People work with Brian as a life coach to break through barriers and live their best lives. You can find out more about Brian and what he offers at www.grieftogrowth.com, www.growth.com, or text GROWTH, GROWTH, to 31996. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit www.patreon.com/grieftogrowth, www.patreon.com/GRIEF, to make a financial contribution. And now, back to Grief to Growth.
Wow. And also, you do suicide prevention. Tell me about your suicide prevention work.
Yeah, actually, I've done walks for I did a walk last year. About 17 of us came together, and we did the Out of Darkness here in Georgia for the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. And that's just really something that I think if you are a part of the suicide community, to definitely to make sure that you connect with those resources, because they do so much more, of course, than the walks, but we actually are able to still learn, understand. We have now, think, due to COVID, we do a lot of Zoom calls, and just the training from licensed professional counselors that come on and share, new data and new education, and how to talk about it. And that's what QPR is. It's a response type learning to help understand and talk by asking the questions, by being persuaded and to refer. That's what QPR means.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it really kind of just gives the preventive type work of how to support someone that may be suicidal, and knowing those signs, and to be active in what we can do to support them, to get them the help that they need.
Yeah, that's really important, and I think with everything that's going on in the world right now, probably more needed than ever. Between with the COVID lockdown, as you referred to, with the gun violence, but also the economic disruption we're going through, and the lifestyle disruption that we're going through. People are there's all kinds of trauma going on right now, and even grief. I mean, people are grieving, because grief doesn't necessarily have to come from a death. It could come from the loss of a job, or the loss of our freedom. Some people are feeling right now because we can't get out. So the work that you're doing is so very much needed, in the world, right at this particular time. So you mentioned earlier ancestral healing. I'd like to hear more about that. You were talking about, is there a way we can heal like generational trauma?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's really just based on you communing with that source. And that just means I have an altar. So if I have an altar, and I may use crystals, or I may even sometimes I put Skittles out, because Taiki loves Skittles. So so I may have that out. My father liked to smoke, so I may have something that he likes to smoke on there. Or so that's just kind of building an altar for the favorite that your loved one may have. So if there's a hat, you can put the hat there. I also I have one of my favorite directors that I used to work with when I worked in community service, and she loved peppermint, so I have peppermint out for her as well. So it's giving the soul an opportunity to come back and to convene with you. And if you actually do just prayers and holding a container is just holding space for your loved one, or that spirit being to connect with you. And being able to do that is just simply lighting candles, repeating scripture, saying your prayers, being able to do rituals, which may include water or sand, or you walking outside on the ground, feeling your feet against the earth, hugging a tree, coming really connected with the earth, is all parts of working with ancestral healing. And what you can design it to what you look like. There's no one fit all. You may decide to put anything that you feel that's going to bring you closer, or have a deeper connection with your loved one. Invite all those things in. Like I said, any type of foods that they may have, and of course you would dispose of it after some time. But oils, water is a good way to always connect with spirit. So I have water throughout my space, and of course, like I said, my candles. I have my oils and my sprays. So whatever that's going to work for you, just building a closer connection and communing with them is what they want and what they desire. And by you being able to do that, I can't say that it'll just happen overnight for you, but by you deciding that this is how I can connect with my loved one, sitting still and listening, it'll happen over time. I mean, I know even for you, and maybe I'm sure your daughter has come to you in some form of action. So, you
all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So when that happens, you can invite that to even happen even more. It's just what you have to decide on the relationship that you want with them. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
really all it is.
here's what I'm curious about. You and I are both African American,
Yeah.
and the last couple of weeks, I mean, you and I spoke, I guess it's been a couple of months ago now to set this up, and since then things have just gone crazy.
Yeah.
And frankly, I woke up this morning and I just felt like the weight of the world was on me because of all the stuff that's going on. And it's not like anything has really changed. I think their eyes have been open to it. So it's just, first of all, just say that it's not like the world went crazy in the last 2 weeks, but we're open to it.
Yeah.
So I was listening to music this morning. I was listening to Sounds of Blackness, which I listen to when I'm down. And I was thinking about like all of our ancestors. I mean, is there anything that we could do for them? Not mine personally necessarily, because I don't know my ancestors. We lost that history when we were brought over here. So I'm just curious, is there anything that we can do about that?
Absolutely. It's just speaking out to who you can call into your presence, whoever that you feel that may be from your father's side, from your mother's side, or just we're communing as the world as one.
Mm-hmm.
Invite those spirits to come and hold space for us being able to recover and to be able to understand that this time was called. We are called to this time right now, and simply probably just to be called to this time to be more aware of what has been happening generational over and over time again, especially what's happening right now with the social justice movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I just actually feel just having the opportunity to sit still with what has happened. Like you said, you woke up this morning feeling like the weight is on your shoulder. Take that energy and transmute it inward.
Mm-hmm.
And just feel and hold what that feels like for you. What is it? Is it rough? Is it ugly? Is it red? What does that feel like? And give it back in honor to be able to move in a solidarity so that we can move forward. Just love on it, nurture it, make it feel better. For whatever you feel that you need to do with that weight, you have to really realistically take things, just like you said, if it's the weight of your shoulder, take that thing off of your shoulder, hold it in front of you, put energy to it. We have the power to heal ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Put energy to it, remove it, whatever it feels like. If it feels rough or heavy, or like you said, you felt the weight of it.
Mm-hmm.
What does that weight look like if you had to examine it and look at it? And if you had to move it and transition it into something that looks lighter, a feather, imagine that and do that. You have the power to do that. It's just you don't have to be certified. You don't have to be a shaman. You can take the weight of the world off of your hands. Think about what's all happening in the world. Like, I always send energy and Reiki to the protesters and still everything that's going on. Reiki is simply just a prayer.
Mm.
There's a lot of times that we could be driving by and there's a accident on the side of the road, and you just not even realizing it, you're just putting your hands up to the window as you're driving by, and you're sending energy to that individual that's in that collision.
Yeah.
Not even realizing you're sending Reiki. You're doing distant Reiki.
I've been doing that for years, and I did it to my daughters. I never even heard of Reiki, but when they were in bed at night, I put my hands over them all the time.
Absolutely. It's just that simple, and it's just making it what feels natural and what's best for you. Yeah. But as far as to answer the question, as far as our ancestors and how can we heal that, it's whatever you desire and whatever you feel is best. Long as you're doing the right thing as far as working with yourself and wanting to heal the world, can't nothing natural but come back to you but the greatness and the goodness what's already inside of you to help bless the world. Just like this podcast that you're doing, you're blessing the world, you're giving your energy, you're putting your energy into it. So you can put your energy just in a prayer, just in a mantra, just sitting still and connecting with your higher spirit, and just communing with that and just making it better and taking it away. You can do that.
Yeah, I'm reading this book right now called The Team, and it basically talks about how we're all one. We're all connected. None of us is individuals. We're in smaller groups that are part of larger groups that are part of larger groups, and ultimately we're all one.
Yeah.
And I'm really starting to feel that more and more. And like I said, I guess what I'm feeling, and this book is an interesting concept because it says you can heal past trauma. You can actually change the past trauma in your own life. And I'm thinking, well, maybe we can even reach back farther than that and help the trauma that our ancestors went through. But it's just there's like so much. I mean, I'm just looking every day. There's just more that we're finding out about the history that's been hidden from us, and the way that our people have been treated for hundreds of years, not
Yeah.
just a few years. And then people that say, well, that's over, that all ended, like whatever. And then I see this morning that the NASCAR driver, they found a noose in his garage. So it's certainly not over, right? And something
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
so the things that you're doing, the things that I'm doing, I feel like we are trying to work on healing, on healing the world. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to bring that out because I think it's really important. And I think especially now, and I was talking to someone just a few weeks before all this kind of broke loose with the George Floyd murder. We were talking about COVID, and we're
Mhm.
like, what that was doing to the world, and how we were all, okay, maybe this is here to wake us up
Mhm.
to start a new thing. And then bam, we're right into this, right on the heels of that. So there's so much, but as you and I both found out, so much growth can come out of the trauma. So that's what we need to try to transmute it, I guess, try to
Yeah.
transform it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I've been telling like a lot of my sisters that are in the gun violence prevention movement, I just think that it's just the time that it's kind of kept us up late at night. It's kind of re-triggered us. It's done a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
When you're so used to going about the same day to day, and now that things have kind of shifted, and it has had us to be reminded of our triggers. It's reminded us of where we need to grow even more. It's reminding us that yes, that gun violence is still, a pivotal part of the epidemic, which is really a pandemic. It's been around a long time, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem like it's going anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, a pandemic within itself. So I think it's just giving us the tools that we need for this time to be able to do more work in helping others understand, what we've gone through, what we're going through, and also still to even help others that are not even a part of the movement, just as a collective group dealing with social injustices and what that looks like. I've seen a lot of division even inside of the awareness of what's going on, even inside of small groups, even
Mm-hmm.
inside of Black and light skin and darker skin. I've seen division all over the place. I've seen it
Yeah.
even inside, like I said, even inside of the movement that I'm in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what we're also learning too, I believe, is things that are no longer supported us. We need new tools for our toolbox.
Yeah.
We need other ways of stretching us because we had gotten really comfortable. You understand?
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think, and I've seen also is a lot of people that are dealing with grief. You mentioned triggers, and when you're dealing with people that have been in grief know what that means. It could
Yeah.
be anything. It could be a song on the radio. It could be an event. It could be, really anything.
Yeah.
And this is triggering a lot of people who thought their grief work was done.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, it's just bringing up it's just bringing all that stuff up again. All the trauma and the
Yeah.
uncertainty. So, I think again, people like you are going to really be needed in this time, because people that think, oh, I don't need to do any of this work, is going to be like, yeah, I really do.
Yeah.
And I'm finding, people who are new to this, what's going on, with all the racial stuff that we're seeing, they're just like, how can this be? And I'm like, guys, it's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
So, wake up, that's fine. We're glad you're here now.
Right.
But this is a marathon, not a sprint, because they want to know, like,
Right.
how can I fix it? What can I do? I want to fix it today. And I'm like,
Yeah.
first we got to understand it, and then we can work on, fixing it.
Right. And then we have to, even as Black Americans, we have to be okay with having the conversations about it, if it's tough or not. We just have to, everything doesn't have to be, I don't feel has to be, everything doesn't have to be a conversation, but I do believe that we need to be able to be okay with having the rough conversations when there are individuals that don't see our side of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that we have to, at this time, just be mindful and listen, more so than speak. I just think that this is a time more to become more aware of what's happening and learn from these experiences now, because they looked a lot different from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
What we're experiencing. Even just it looks different from last year,
Yeah.
from me being a part of the gun violence prevention movement. So I think that right now is a good time to just get to know who you are and what best works for you. And with dealing with grief, I think I do understand that it's a journey. Even for myself, it's been a journey. And everybody just really needs to understand that I have to decide what it's going to look like for me, and not, grief isn't just one size fit all.
Right.
It's really based on what you feel, what you're going through, of course, how long and how much you love that individual. Even if it's a divorce, if you're struggling with that type of loss,
Mm-hmm.
who you are now outside of that union, and what
Right.
does your life look like now. It's really a time to really get to know yourself, and what all that this time is bringing. And that sounds so cliche and sounds like that's so simple, but it's work. It's actually work trying to get to where I am now.
Yeah.
It really took some understanding and some, me messing up some things, and me just fiddling my way through the darkness.
Yeah.
Me deciding to have a support group, because at times, we don't want to be bothered when you're grieving. You just don't want to be bothered with nobody. I don't have time for it. I don't want to hear it. But I've learned so much, and people just have to be patient with their process and just be okay with dealing with the type of loss that they're experiencing, and just dealing with it, going through it, feeling the weight of it, not turning off the fact that it's going to be painful, feel the pain,
Yeah.
not wanting to not talk about it, not hearing the voices that are in your head, not feeling sad, feel everything. And
Yeah.
what COVID has taught me, because I just recently lost an uncle through COVID.
Sorry.
And thank you. And that's a whole new experience within itself, because of you're not being able to maybe possibly go to a funeral, or you can't,
Yeah.
you're not doing. So it's so much for us to learn right now. So it's just a time of being aware of our surroundings and how to learn and change with the time.
Yeah. Well, you just touched on something there that I want to kind of bring out. You said, I'm going to rephrase it, say lean into it, but to feel all the feelings,
Yeah.
because a lot of times with grief, people say it's too hard. I don't want to deal with it. I'll put it aside and I'll deal with it later. And I'm like, you're going to deal with it. You're going to either deal with it now or you're going to deal with it later. And later is probably going to be worse. And it's kind of the same thing we're going through with this whole awakening we're having over racism in America. We have pushed it aside. We have put it under the rug. We've had people deny that it exists. We've had other people like, African Americans, frankly, that don't want to talk about it because it's too uncomfortable. And now's the time to have these uncomfortable conversations. And we have to face it. We've got to bring it up and talk about it before we can heal it. And that's the first step in any process of healing, is facing what's wrong. So I'd say a big similarity between that and grief.
Yeah, it's definitely happening. Even if we don't want to have the conversation or not, it's what's appealing about the whole process of the social injustices, and what we're learning that we could do a lot better at as just Black Americans. I think not just really buying into everything that we see and hear is very important as well, because a lot of the news, I think, just tries to enrage us and make us upset and angry. So I think we have to, I'm just going to keep going back to mindful, just being in the present moment and understanding, what am I supposed to take from this today, even if there's a crazy report on the news, and how can I process this in a manner that's going to support people, instead of sharing the negative part of it, to be able to find not to add any more division than we already have, but to,
Right.
why did I need to see this? And ask those questions to yourself. Why did I need to see this? What do I need to do with this information? And how can I be able to make a difference just from this? And a lot of time what we're of course, what has always been said is what you consume consumes you. So if I'm consuming in a lot of news and negative imagery,
Hmm.
I'm going to feel sucky by the
Yeah.
end of the day.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and if I do consume some of that, why did I need to know this? And I would definitely recommend anybody in this time to make sure that they're journaling. Keep 2 journals. Use one for grief and one just for thoughts.
Yeah.
And to be able to go back to those things to kind of figure out, why am I ingesting the things that I am being faced with? Because even in that, there's a learning process for us to be able to get something out of it. And maybe that's one of the things that I need to work with my ancestors with, to be able to understand more of that, and why is that, and be able to heal that.
Yeah. That was another excellent point you just made. I think, well, 2 things. One is, whenever something happens, the question I've learned to ask, and this I've just learned recently, so it's like I've known this my whole life. Why did this happen, and what is it here to teach me?
Yeah.
Because I believe everything that happens in our life, I mean, literally everything, is here to teach us something. Or whether you believe it's planned, I happen to believe that, or you don't believe it's planned, you can learn something from it.
Yeah.
The other thing that you touched upon is, I think there has to be balance, because I hear some people say, well, I don't want to ingest anything negative, so I'm just going to turn off to the world. I'm just going to be a spiritual person. And I call that spiritual bypassing. And I don't think that's what we're here to do. I think we're here to
Right.
engage.
Mm-hmm.
But there has to be a balance, because I see some people getting overly consumed with the negative also.
Yeah.
And I can find myself getting to that point. And that's when the point where I'm like, I've got to turn it off for a little while. I've got to come back into balance,
Mm-hmm.
because there's always this balance as a human being between being a human being in the body and
Yeah.
being that higher spiritual self. And we're both at the same time.
Yeah.
So we have to always be balancing those things. And I think what I was telling you I was feeling this morning was a little bit of that overwhelm with, like, it's just too much.
Yeah.
And that's when you have to kind of step back a little bit.
Yeah. And your body tells you when that is. And you,
Yeah.
like you said, you felt the weight of it. So you know the things that you need to do. One of the things that I often tell clients, or people that I'm discussing grief with, is get a little cheat sheet. Put 5 things on your little cheat sheet that supports you. If that's listening to jazz, if that's listening to um, um, television with your pastor, or if that's
Yeah.
walking outside, if that's hugging a tree, if that's having a glass of wine. Just I would post those things in every area of my home, and I do have that in every area of my home, where I eat, sleep, in the restroom, in my office. And I have that there because when I'm simply triggered, or I'm not feeling susceptible to actually doing the things that I know that's going to support me, which are these things that are on this 5 list, on this list, I can draw to that, because it's going to say, it's a reminder. It's just like affirmations. Turn on your favorite song, or pull out that book, or it's just a reminder of the things that's going to keep me in a tranquil space, and also remind me of the things that I need to do that's going to support me. Because a lot of times, when you're not feeling it, and you're upset, or you're angry, or you're feeling heavy, you're not going to draw to the things that you love to do the most, because you're just in this mood. You're just like,
Right.
oh, I don't want
Right.
to do it. I don't feel like it's days that I don't want to go out into my prayer room. It's days that I don't want to work with my altar. It's days that I don't want to work with my spiritual self. But I'm that way because I've probably ingested some of those just feelings, or I'm just feeling tired, or I'm just, I'm affected by what has happened throughout the day, or I could just be drained from working with other grievers. So I have to be reminded, and that's what those little lists do for me, just to remind me of the things and the joy that can, bring me back to myself, in order for me to move forward, and not to be, self-loathing.
Yeah, that's yeah. That's why I was talking to a client early this morning, and I was telling her that grief, and actually we're going through it now. It's another form of grief. It's a practice.
Yeah.
So I have a ritual, kind of like you talked about. There's things that I do every day, and I haven't been able to walk the last 2 days because my wife, she had surgery, so I've been like really busy. So that 7-mile walk I take every morning, I haven't done the last 2 days. So you just brought up a good point. That's probably why I was feeling the way I did today.
Yeah.
So we even as coaches and stuff, we have to do our own practice. But the key is you're going to have these times because we are human. We're still in the body. We're going to have these times, but it's what do you do with it when it happens? Okay.
Yeah.
So now that I've had this happen, what do I do? For me, today I was able to turn on some music while I was doing my other work, that music
Yeah.
that lifts me up, that, makes me feel better. Doing these interviews, helps me. It
Yeah.
energizes me.
Yeah.
So we got to find those things that can help us get through these times that we all go through, but they're for growth. And I'm really, as bad as things seem right now, I think it's here for our growth, and I see so much potential coming out of it. And I know that I've been talking to people about these things for years, and frankly, people were just kind of like, "Oh, there goes Brian again." But now everybody wants to engage.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to reach as many people as I can.
Yeah. And I love your show. Thank you so much.
Another thing I want to talk with you about, and you and I kind of talked about this a little bit offline, just to be really frank, again, we're both African Americans, and we don't see a lot of us in this spiritual space, in this grief space. Working with Helping Parents Heal, we've talked about it because if it's frankly a mostly Caucasian organization. We had one conference, and it was mostly Caucasian people. I know economics probably plays a part in something like a conference, but what are your thoughts on why we don't see more African Americans, having conversations like this?
I just think it's the miseducation behind all of it, and us, just generationally not talking and speaking about grief. I knew I didn't grow up in a family to talk about what happened if my cousin or uncle or grandmother died and what that looked like, and or how was I supposed to process that. I know when I grew up, and there were funerals, what would happen with the young adults is they would all go into a room, and then the adults would, they would all go into another room. This is, of course, after the funeral. But
Mm-hmm.
when everybody's fellowshipping, everybody's, of course, they're talking about, the loved one or whatever, and then it turns into a party. And then, of course, the children are just happy to be with their cousins and,
Yeah.
families. So there's no education about what we're supposed to do in supporting ourselves. There's the eulogy, of course, at the funeral, and then there's there was these Friday, Saturday, there was these 3 long days of the death tradition or the mourning process or whatever tradition that you're from and what that looked like. But as far as in the Black African American community, we were just used, of course, to the travel time, the wake. You get there and you're communing with your family, and we're going to cry outwardly, and then we're going to have a good dinner, of course, and then we're going to talk about the good old times and dance and drink.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
So that really wasn't a way to engage individuals to want to do this even more, to learn about it more,
Mm-hmm.
because it really, it gave us an opportunity to be able to express ourselves to a certain degree, but it didn't give us an opportunity to be able to learn from it, and how after, like they say, after the casserole, which is everybody's gone home and nobody's no longer talking about what just occurred, during that time period, what am I to do with my thoughts? So
Right.
we didn't have any resources available that was taught through our family history on supporting us of how to do that. So of course it's not going to look. We didn't have a roadmap or to even to say like the 5 stages of grief to even understand what we were going to experience.
Yeah.
So we didn't have that. So that's why we're not there, and that's why we don't have a seat at the table, because we never had the opportunity, because it was never taught to us. And then even back in time, our ancestors are those that were enslaved. It was frowned upon for them to grieve their loved ones when they was just snatched and sold
Yeah.
from them. So we never got the opportunity to express outwardly how that looks, and we pass that on to our families, and that's why there's not so many of us sitting at the table having these conversations. But I think over the last 2 years, grief has become more spoken about, and we are kind of getting our community in that realm of speaking about it, and forming grief groups and trainings, and sharing that opportunity with our family. One thing, when I was talking about COVID, because this is just a weird time for your loved one to die in this time.
Yeah.
One thing that I did with my family was I did a family support grief and healing group, and what I did was I called on all of the elders of my family to speak. So same kind of similar things that you would do at the funeral, but I wanted them to actually have an opportunity to speak to my family and the younger ones, and especially it was my uncle who passed, and my uncle had a lot of children that were not, didn't all have the same mother. So I wanted to be able to kind of reunite them and let them know that this side of their family really wanted to continue in the engagement of their day to day and see how they were doing. And because he passed in South Florida, a lot of the family is also here too. And there are a lot of children all over, but I wanted to just bring our family kind of together and say, hey, we still have a space available, even if it's by Zoom, to be able to talk about what has happened and share, your thoughts about him, and even get to know each other, because a lot of them don't even know each other, and they're sister and brother. So there's all type of things that we can do now, and having a seat at the table to talk about grief and to change the trajectory of what it looks like.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'm hoping that that continues, that permission to talk about grief. I think there's also, I don't know if there's a religious component to it, because as I said earlier, I was raised as a Christian, and it's kind of like, okay, well, people die and they go to heaven, and then when we go to heaven, we see them again, which satisfies some people but doesn't satisfy all of us. When I found that I could still have a relationship with my daughter who passed, and I could still talk to my uncle who passed 35 years ago, and I could still talk to my grandmother who passed 40 plus years ago, or 38 years ago, whatever it was. I'm like, okay, that's what I want. I want to be able to have that continuing, ongoing relationship. And I'll see them again. It's both. And I can know that I'm going to see them again. I don't just have to just believe it.
Yeah.
So that's the message that I want to give to people, because I think that's all, even in terms of grief, that's a kind of a new way of doing grief, because the traditional thing about grief was, okay, we're going to teach you to get over to cope with the fact that they're gone. So let's just accept the fact that they're gone, and we'll cope with it and just learn to move on. Which didn't work for me. I saw a grief counselor had that kind of approach. I saw him 3 times, and I was like, I don't need this. This is not helping.
Yeah.
I think it's so great that, people like you and I can talk to people about, like, your life still has meaning. Your loved one still wants to commune with you. You can do things like you can build the altar. You can commune with them every day, like I do. You asked me about Shayna. That's why I have this picture up behind me, because Shayna always reminded me that she's part of my work. I mean, she's like, not just, she's the inspiration for it, but she's also part of it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Trust me, I do get it and I understand. And she shines right through, telling us that this was also a part of her mission, and that you're just carrying it on. So thank you for sharing her light, because as a parent that has lost a child, I definitely do get it. And we are always going to be working until we can help save someone else from their grievances, or just in any manner that we can, just because of that, that loss that was so significant and just at times still unbelievable. But we always find our way, and through stories, sharing that I know that you constantly hear, and advice, and just sharing your story as well. Because even with you sharing about your daughter even helps me, because I have a podcast as well, but I'm seeing that this is possible. This can happen. I can move on every day if I see my brother being able to do this and live vicariously through it. So it just gives me strength. So thank you.
Yeah, I was talking to a grandmother this morning whose grandson had passed, and she was calling, on behalf of her son, and it just happened a month ago. And I'm like, I went back to that, a month when it was a month, and I'm like, okay, I know where he is, right? And I just want him to see someone who's 5 years. It'll be 5 years for me on Wednesday. It's not easy, it's like it's work, but you can get there. And having that person that survived for, and for me, when I joined Helping Parents Heal, was seeing those other parents that have been in it for 10 years who were healing. Because frankly, you don't have to heal from grief, because people say, well, can I get over it? Can I heal from it? You can stay in it. I've seen people that have stayed in it for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're right today where they were 20 years ago. Still angry at the person, the drunk driver, still angry at the doctor, still, why did this happen to me? You can do that. But you can also make a choice to not do that.
Yeah.
And so, but I like what you said at the very beginning. Maybe this is a good way to close it out. You said the first thing is to make that decision. And that's the first step. Whenever anybody calls me, I'm like, you've already started.
Yeah.
Just the fact that you called me says you want to get better. And that's the first step.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Miami, it's been really fascinating talking to you. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we close today?
Yes, I just want to, my call to action is, if anybody, no matter where you are, text, get your phone out, just take your phone out right now. And I would like for you to text HONOR, HONOR, to 64433. That's HONOR, HONOR, to 64433. And that is to let every town know that I am a fellow and that I have had this conversation to talk about grief, and also to tell my story in regards to Taiki, and this how we're trying to make a difference in regards to gun violence.
Oh, wow. Awesome. That's great. Let me give everybody your website again. It's miamiknightllc.com. It's Miami, M-I, Night with a K, LLC.com. And remind me the name of your book again. I know it's here, but I'll let you do it.
The Key Process, A Grief Guide to Mastering Spiritual Healing. And you can get that on Amazon, or you can also go to my website.
Yeah, and I also want to let people know, because I'm not sure if we touched on this. I was looking at your website earlier. You offer grief counseling services, but also combined with energy healing services, which I think is a fantastic combination.
Yes, and I can do Reiki distantly. So if you would love one of those sessions, I have 3 different sessions. And if you want to work with your ancestors, or if you just want to do some own personal chakra type releasing of energy through that way, I can also provide that resource for you as well.
Awesome. It's been really great getting to meet you.
Thank you so much. I really love being on the show.
You have a good afternoon.
You too. Thank you.
That's it for another episode of Grief to Growth. I sure hope you got something out of it. Please stay in contact with me by reaching out at www.grieftogrowth.com. That's grief, the number 2, growth.com. Or you can text the word growth to 31996. That's simply text growth, GROWTH, to 31996. Since you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure you're subscribed. So hit the subscribe button and then hit the little bell here, and it'll notify you when I have new content. Always, please share the information if you enjoy it. That helps me to get more views and to get the message out to more people. Thanks a lot, and have a wonderful day.